There's a moment in every coaching engagement where the data converges and the picture gets clear. The leader has taken the assessments, analyzed the feedback, and seen the pattern. They stop saying, I think my issue might be, and start saying, my primary gap is. That shift from hypothesis to diagnosis is where real development begins. That's what we're doing now. This is the pivotal moment in the course. You've been learning about gaps in modules 1 and 2 and testing for your gap throughout module 3. Now you're going to name it. You have 2 data sources, ACE assessment scores, and your 360 analysis. When they agree, both pointing to the same primary gap, the diagnosis is clear. When they disagree, the 360 data takes priority. Here's why. Executive presence is the distance between what you intend and what others experience. The 360 captures the what others experience side of that equation. Your self-assessment captures the what you intend side. When they disagree, the external data wins because the gap is the disagreement. Your gap profile has 2 components. Your primary gap, the dimension with the widest divergence in your 360 data, or the lowest ACE assessment score if 360 data isn't available. This is where you'll focus your development work. Your secondary gap, the dimension with the next widest divergence, or any dimension where scores are close enough to the primary to warrant monitoring. Not every profile has a clear secondary. One gap may dominate entirely. Others show 2 gaps that are close. Both patterns are normal and both are actionable. If you have close scores or a complex profile, start with the gap where you have the most external evidence, the clearest 360 signal. If truly equal, start with expression. It's the most common gap in coaching practice, and the exercises produce visible results fastest, which builds momentum for the harder work of authority or context. The recommendation: complete your primary module before addressing secondary gaps. Trying to close all 3 gaps simultaneously is one of the most common mistakes I see. The primary gap gets focused attention first. Secondary gaps are monitored but not actively targeted until the primary shows measurable closure. Targeted development outperforms diffuse improvement every time. If your primary gap is expression, start with Module 4. The work focuses on decision narration, expression calibration, and using silence strategically. In Module 2, Video 2.1, you saw that the expression gap is the distance between processing and visibility. Module 4 gives you 4 specific exercises to make the internal external, the thinking out loud protocol, the decision narration practice, the expression calibration exercise, and the silence reading drill. Each one targets a different dimension of the same gap. Together, they produce measurable change within 4 weeks of consistent practice. If authority is your primary gap, Module 5 is your starting point. The work targets register shift, moving from proving to projecting, from speaking first to speaking last, from detail to position first communication. In Module 2, Video 2.2, we named the authority gap as the distance between earning the role and occupying it. You've done the work to get here. You've built the expertise and the track record, but the room still experiences you as the person who earned the seat, not the person who owns it. Module 5 targets that specific behavioral shift. It includes the meeting contribution audit, restraint practices, and the transition from analyst communication to executive communication. If context is your primary gap, Module 6 is where you begin. The work starts with organizational mapping, understanding what this specific organization, the specific culture defines as executive before changing any behavior. In Module 2, Video 2.31, you learn that the context gap is about the system, not just the individual. You may have presence that works brilliantly in one environment and falls flat in another. The problem isn't you, it's the mismatch between your style and this audience's evaluation template. Module 6 includes the organizational culture read, stakeholder mapping, and style switching within your authentic range, not becoming someone different, becoming effective in this context. Assessment isn't a one-time event. Here's the cadence that actually produces results. Baseline before you begin the development work, which you've just completed. That's step 1, and you've done it. Targeted reassessment at month 3 or 4, a focused check on your primary gap dimension to see if behavioral changes are registering with stakeholders. This is where you'll see whether the exercises are producing visible shifts. And a full post-engagement assessment at month 6, a complete rerun to measure gap closure across all 3 dimensions. In Module 1, Video 1.13, we talked about behavioral change happening in weeks, while perception change takes 3 to 6 months. The assessment cadence is designed to measure both. The month 3-4 check catches behavioral change, and the month 6 assessment captures whether stakeholders have actually updated their perception of you. Self-reported improvement is unreliable for executive presence precisely because the core problem is a disconnect between internal experience and external perception. You can't skip the assessment cadence and assume the gap is closed based on how it feels. That's measuring the wrong side of the equation. And don't treat the gap diagnosis as a permanent label. Your gap profile changes as development progresses. Reassessment is how you track that change. The gap you start with isn't the gap you'll have in 6 months. That's the whole point. Write down your gap profile right now. Primary gap, which one? What's the strongest piece of evidence from your 360 data? Secondary gap, if you have one, which one? In one sentence, what's the first thing you expect to learn in the module that addresses your primary gap? This is your development starting point. Everything from here is targeted practice. Your diagnosis is complete. You know your primary gap, you have the evidence, and you know which module to go to next. The rest of this course is practice, targeted exercises matched to your specific gap type. Go to the module that addresses your primary gap. The work starts now.